So I am doing one of those financial videos again. And I know that it's quite hard to keep up with these finance talks, but I think it's important because they are relevant and these are things that people go through on a daily. Now, I understand and I appreciate that a lot of graduates are about to start working, and naturally when you start working, you're going to want to move out of home or buy a car, or need to buy a car, or need to move out of home to be closer to work, whatever the case may be. But I do think there's still a gap to talk about buying cars prematurely, or buying a car when you don't really need it at the time or at the point in your life. And that's really what I'm trying to highlight in this video. My advice is really for those who are going to start working soon, who just started working, who are considering buying cars, and the motivating factor for them is that it's gonna be nice to have a car. No. Do you need it? Do you need it? Or can you get by without it? What is your life like? What is your day-to-day schedule? Does it require you to travel? Are you in one place more often than not? These are the things that you should be thinking about when it comes to making the decision of buying a car. Not, okay, the money allows now, let me buy it. Yeah, it allows, but maybe maybe it's not the right time to do it now. You can do it later, because right now there's so many other things happening. COVID. So that's what I want to talk about. And the best way I know how is to tell a story. This is not my story. This is Appy's story. Unfortunately, Appy won't tell the story because he doesn't feel comfortable doing so. So I will do it on his behalf. In 2014, Appy started working and he was a first-year candidate attorney. He bought a Polo Vivo, naturally because he had enough money to do so. And at the end of that year, he got into a car accident whilst driving home to Cape Town and wrote off the car. Unfortunately, sharp, but not sharp. He was okay. He got out of that accident with a scratch. The car, on the other hand, was a write-off. 2015, we started working together. Between January and June of that year, he did not have a motor vehicle, but he lived close enough to work for him to walk to work. And that was convenient for him because it meant he didn't have to rush to buy a new car. In June of that year, he bought a motorbike, which we tried to convince him not to do because we were like, what lawyer drives a bike to work? In hindsight, he wasn't buying it because he was looking for means to get to work. I think he just bought it because he likes bikes. Nevertheless, that was the first bike he bought. In a month, he wrote that bike off. He got into another accident where a car drove into him, and that's when he landed up in hospital. I'm getting to the point. One mistake that he made with both those purchases, right, the car and the bike, is that he did not have comprehensive insurance. That is to say that if your car gets written off, or if you get into a car accident and your car is written off and insurance has to pay you for the value of your car or your motorbike, they only pay the market value, something like that. They don't pay what you owe on the vehicle. And so he had to pay that small amount off on both the bike and the car. That's not really a train smash, and this video is not about insurance. But if you're going to buy a car, please make sure you've got the right insurance. Anyway, so all this happened in 2015, right? It is 2021, the 11th of December today. And you won't believe me if I say to you that Appy hasn't bought a car since the car he bought as a candidate attorney. He's bought a couple of bikes, yes. I think he's on his fourth bike now. But the costs of obviously the amount you spend on bikes is significantly less than what you would on a car. That also depends on the type of bike you buy. The point is that this guy has made it through all these years without owning a vehicle, and he's fine, right? Now, why is it that he was able to write off his car and decide not to buy a car again? That's because he didn't need it. You know, like when you look at your life at the end of the day, yes, you could buy a car, and yes, it's going to be an additional expense that you may or may not afford, or it might be a stretch or make you a little bit uncomfortable. Decide, choose your battles. What do you want in life? But overall, when he came to the conclusion of the matter, the conclusion was he doesn't need a car and he's not going to buy it, at least back then and even now. I know the reasons for him not having a car now are different to back then, but this is what I'm just trying to highlight in this video, that sometimes you don't need a car, right? Now, what are the factors that one has to consider if they want to evaluate whether or not they actually need a car? Your life. Like, I could never be Appy. I don't do the things that he does. First of all, he does nothing, okay? Most of the time he's at home. He's been working from home since the inception of COVID, since lockdown. He hasn't had to go back to the office. And if he does, it's by choice. So he doesn't move around. On weekends, he may see his friends or they may come over. But the necessity of the car is not there. It's not there at all. And even if it means that, okay, come weekend, I have to go to my friend's birthday party, the costs of getting to that party via Uber are way less than what he's going to spend if he has to pay premiums every month, on top of that insurance and all these other costs that come with owning a car, gas, whatever else that may be, right? That's his life. His life suits him in the sense that the rest of us, it could never be, right? So look at me, on the other hand. Since the inception of COVID, I've been going to work, right? Even during hard lockdown, I was going to work. Or there was a timetable. We had a hybrid system where 1 week in, 1 week out. But that's not the only reason why I have a car. I tutor on Saturdays, drive to Alex, right? I go to church in Nwabupani. My parents live in Pretoria. I'm there every once in a while on weekends. And I'm just a person who likes being on the streets in general. So I cannot afford not having a car, because the costs that I would spend via Uber would be very high. But never mind that, it would just be inconvenient having to wait for an Uber for every single thing that I have to do, given the fact that I'm always in a car. So for me, having a car was a necessity. For him, not so much. And actually, quite honestly, it makes sense. At the end of the day, now we're married. Back then we weren't, but we have one car to use, the both of us, and it works. We don't need to. Imagine we were both working from home and we both had cars. It's an extra cost that doesn't need to be there. If you've got one car that can get you from point A to B, and you know both of you can utilize that car because you're not as busy, then it's enough. People who are going to start working now and believe that they need new cars or think they might need a car because of work. Let me just start off by saying COVID has changed a lot of things. And yes, it depends on the company or the firm that you work at, because at the end of the day, if you have to go to work on a daily, then who am I to tell you don't buy a car? But if you live close to work, for example, and the costs of getting to work are cheap, and you know, in this unpredictable stage of COVID, why would you buy a car? Why? Especially if you're starting off. Maybe if you've been working for a while and you've saved up all this money and whatever, I get it. I'm talking about people who just started working 1, 2, 3 years into your career. Okay, if you're 3 years, you already bought a car. But you just started. Why would you take up that expense so immediately with COVID being so unpredictable? We don't know what's going to happen in the next year or 2 years, right? That's not to say you'll never buy a car. It's to say at the current moment, you might not need it. So look at that. Consider that. I want to say, especially to lawyers, a lot of the time you're told that you need a car because you're going to have to run around and do, you know, tasks that are related to work, whether it's serving and filing and all of that. Things have changed. People don't go to court to file anymore, at least what I understand, right? There's an electronic system, there's case files. Over and above that, companies have cars that you can utilize to do your work, and they've got drivers or messengers who can do the work as well. So buying a car because your work requires you to have a car, that's not a reason. As far as I'm concerned, that's not even legal according to the new act, the Legal Practice Act. You cannot make it a requirement that a prospective employee have a driver's license or a car before you consider them for employment. So it shouldn't be your reason to buy a car. Buy a car because you want to, because you need it, you can afford it, you're going to be traveling a lot, have concrete reasons for buying a car. If you like things, again, who am I to tell you anything? If I know because all your life you wanted to get a car, you wanted to move around, again, who am I to tell you not to buy a car? But the trend that I've seen with a lot of graduates most recently, even before COVID, is they give themselves time before buying a car. Give themselves a year, maybe a little bit more than that before they buy a car, because quite honestly, at the onset of your working career, you don't need it. So wait. Evaluate your life, evaluate where you are, and see whether or not you need it. I'm telling you about Api, who since his first year of articles to today hasn't owned a car, and that's because he did not need it. And yes, he could have bought it, but can you imagine the amount of money you can save if you decide, look, my car's sitting in the parking, I'm not traveling as much as I used to anyway because of COVID, but even if I did, I can get to work quite easily because I live close enough, etc., etc., etc. All of those things play a factor in whether or not it's a necessity or it's a need for you to get a car, at least right now. Get it, but get it at the right time. That's really what I want to say. Bona babangwe barekile dikoloi just before COVID or during COVID. Mara dikoloi tsela di phakile ko parking. When telling you, like, it's a waste. No one's saying don't buy cars. No one's saying don't buy things, because these things are nice. It's fine. But right now, when life is so unpredictable, I don't even know why people bother buying cars right now, during COVID. Unless you really need it. Life hasn't changed for you. COVID hasn't changed your life. At this current moment, there's so many things that are happening. It's so unpredictable. Wait for a time where we understand what's going on. Where things go back 100% to being normal. Where we're not waiting for another wave and a possible further lockdown for an unknown period. And then your car's just sitting there, but you're paying premiums every month where you could save that money. Sharp, guys. That's all I have to say. Until the next episode.